I never thought I'd end up knee-deep in garbage, fishing out my daughter's broken heart. But life has a sick sense of humor sometimes. The morning started normal, too normal, that eerie calm before everything goes to hell. I was heading to my mother Patricia's house to help clean up after her 65th birthday party. The celebration had been elegant, dramatic, full of art world small talk and very little cake. I hadn't stayed long. My daughter Maya had been the main event as far as I was concerned. Maya had shown up with her sculpture wrapped like a sacred relic. 7 months of her life carved and sanded into form, her nerves humming like live wires. I remember her hands shaking as she handed it over. She'd also written a letter, a real letter, with words like admiration, gratitude, and thank you for inspiring me to become who I am. It should have been a moment. It should have meant something. But when I walked into Patricia's living room the next morning, the only thing on display was a crayon drawing from my 10-year-old nephew, Tyler. It showed a wonky house, a sun the size of Jupiter, and a stick figure that I assumed was supposed to be Grandma. It was framed, actually framed behind glass, hung at eye level. Patricia gushed about it when she saw me, how charming it was, how bold, how Tyler had such a raw sense of form. Looked like raw chicken, if we're being honest. But sure, let's pretend the child who once ate a glue stick is the next Picasso. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. I asked about Maya's piece as casually as I could manage. Patricia didn't even blink. "Still deciding where to place it," she said. "Stored somewhere safe for now. Too much clutter from the party, you understand." I nodded, smiled, said nothing, because if I said what I wanted to say, it would have involved phrases like, "Are you kidding me?" and "Where the hell is it?" I was trying. God, I was trying not to ruin things. I told myself it was fine, that Maya's sculpture was probably just wrapped up in bubble wrap, waiting for its moment. And then I went to take out the trash. It was just one of those normal things you do at your mom's house. Grab a bag, head to the backyard, open the bin. I wish I could unsee what I saw next. There, half submerged in moldy lettuce and something pink that might have once been shrimp, was a jagged edge of gray clay. It had this curve I recognized instantly because I'd seen Maya mold that curve over and over again with her hands, smoothing it until it practically breathed. My blood ran cold. I dropped the trash bag, walked closer, opened the lid all the way. There was the sculpture. Maya's sculpture, crushed between an empty champagne bottle and a torn paper plate soaked in grease. I froze. I know people say that sometimes, but I really did. My body stopped working. My mind couldn't catch up. Then my heart started pounding, a horrible animal kind of pounding, because all I could think was, Maya can't see this. She can never see this. She gave her heart to my mother, and my mother threw it in the trash. Literally. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I knew was I had to get it out. I reached in, but the sculpture was heavy, awkward, buried under layers of trash. I tugged, but it wouldn't budge. So I did the only thing I could think to do. I climbed into the bin. Let me be clear. I'm a grown woman. I have a career, I pay taxes, I use hyaluronic acid, and I was up to my knees in garbage juice, trying to rescue my daughter's soul. The stench was immediate and violent, like fermented betrayal with top notes of expired salmon. I didn't care. I dug down, gritting my teeth, balancing awkwardly as I reached for the base of the sculpture. It was smeared in food and something sticky I didn't want to investigate. But I had it. I had it in my arms. That's when I heard it. Laughter. I turned my head, and there he was, Tyler, standing 10 feet away with his phone up, filming. He yelled about his aunt being in the trash like it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. I tried to tell him to stop. Too late. He was already shouting into the house. I was about to beg him when I heard a car door slam. Maya had just pulled up. I panicked, clutched the sculpture to my chest, and tried to crouch down as if somehow hiding in the bin would make me invisible. Maya rounded the corner, frowning at the noise. She stopped when she saw me. Then her eyes dropped to what I was holding. I stood frozen, covered in trash, clay in my arms. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. I said something pathetic about it not being what it looked like. Maya stepped closer. Her face was pale. She asked if Grandma threw it away, her voice so small, like she already knew the answer but needed to hear it from someone who wouldn't lie to her. And I couldn't speak, because anything I said would break her more. She blinked hard, then turned, walked back to her car, got in, and drove away. I stood there in the bin alone, clutching what was left of her heart. That night, I didn't go looking for old wounds. I just wanted to scrub the garbage stench off my skin, wash the clay from my hands, and maybe pretend none of it happened until morning. But Maya was already home when I got there. Shoes kicked off by the door, face blank. She didn't ask me if I'd saved the sculpture. She didn't ask me anything. She just walked past me straight to her studio and shut the door. I stood there holding what was left of her heart in my arms. 7 months of sculpting, sanding, and shaping, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't know what to do. So I did what I always do when I feel helpless. I cleaned. I scrubbed off every smear of food, every trace of wet cardboard. I dried it carefully. I placed it back on her workbench, and then I sat down in the hallway outside her door and stared at nothing for a very long time. While I sat there, I thought about how we got here, how we always get here. I'm Patricia's older daughter, 5 years older than my sister Rebecca. For most of my childhood, I felt like an accidental pause in my parents' story, something that happened between modeling gigs and financial promotions. Our dad worked in finance, senior-level stuff. We had money, not extravagant money, but enough that our fridge never buzzed empty and our house always looked magazine-ready. Patricia could reinvent herself without ever worrying about the electricity bill. He was barely home. Long hours, lots of travel. The kind of man who bought you an expensive doll from an airport gift shop and called it bonding. But he never minded being the breadwinner. That was his thing. Provider, traditional values, and all that. Patricia, on the other hand, was always on some new personal reinvention tour. First, she was a model, not the runway type, more catalog and local commercial variety. She was beautiful, still is, even at 65, the kind of beauty that makes people stop mid-sentence. For a while, that was enough for her, until it wasn't. When she got too full-figured for the industry, her words, not mine, she pivoted, became an art critic, started a blog, reviewed galleries, joined something called the Art Appreciators Club, a name that has aged like lukewarm milk. Our house turned into a revolving door of art friends, people with scarves in July and opinions on negative space. Dad didn't get it, but he nodded, smiled, kept the lights on. Then came Rebecca, 5 years younger, the golden child, the miracle baby, the one with dimples and volume and glitter in her footsteps. I told myself it was because she was the baby, that things would even out, that being responsible and helpful and quiet would pay off eventually. Spoiler, it didn't. Rebecca could throw a tantrum in the middle of the Guggenheim, and Mom would call it an early sign of expressive energy. I once got grounded for wiping my hands on a towel instead of letting them air dry, because you don't know what fabric does to the oils and paint. But I took it. I was the older one. I endured. It's what I do. When Dad retired, things changed. Not in the way you might hope. The money slowed down, but the lifestyle didn't. Patricia had no plans to adjust. Instead, I found myself gradually picking up the slack. It started small, helping with holiday costs, covering a bill here or there. Then it became bigger. Medical stuff, flights, their annual New Mexico artist retreat. No one asked outright. They never had to. And I never said no. Then Maya was born. My daughter, my heart, my center. And from the moment she could hold a pencil, she drew shapes, shadows, people, creatures. She lived in lines and texture. I never pushed her toward art. It was already in her bones. Patricia, of course, took notice. First, I was grateful. She took Maya to museums, introduced her to her art friends, gave her books on sculpture and modernism. For a while, I believed, really believed, that this was going to be different, that Maya was going to get what I never had. Except it wasn't different. It was worse. Because Maya didn't see the favoritism. She didn't feel the ice in her grandmother's compliments. She called it honesty. Maya genuinely believed that her grandmother's approval was worth chasing, that if she worked hard enough, created something good enough, she'd get it. And for 7 months, she did exactly that. She sculpted, poured herself into it, skipped outings, stayed up late, rejected early drafts of her own work like a professional. She wanted to create something worthy, something that would make Patricia pause and say more than just, not bad. She wrapped it with care, drove it over herself. She even included a letter. I saw her writing it, folding it, tucking it in. She didn't show it to me, but I saw the expression on her face when she sealed the envelope, like she was putting a little piece of her soul in there, like it mattered. At the party, she waited until the right moment, quietly presented her gift. Patricia unwrapped it, looked at it for a long moment, and said it was good. That was it. No smile, no follow-up, no "this part is interesting" or "you've grown so much." Just good. Maya smiled, nodded, said thank you. But later that night, as we got in the car, she asked if I thought Patricia had liked it. I asked what she meant. She'd said it was good, hadn't she? Maya analyzed every word, every pause, every inflection. She wasn't joking. She was studying the tone, the cadence, the angle of Patricia's smile, like her grandmother was some kind of art world sphinx, and Maya just had to solve the riddle to earn her affection. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that Patricia wasn't a critic. She was a narcissist in pearls, that no level of perfection would ever be enough. That good was probably the nicest thing she was ever going to get. But I couldn't. Not yet. So I just told her I was proud of her, that the piece was beautiful. She nodded, quiet for a while. Then she said Patricia wouldn't lie, that if she didn't like it, she'd say so. I nodded too, but in my chest, something cracked. Because what Patricia said wasn't kindness. It was dismissal, polished to sound neutral. I don't know how long I sat outside Maya's door that night, long enough for the hallway light to flicker, long enough for my back to start aching in that particular way that reminds you your 20s are definitely over. The sculpture was in her studio now, clean, or as clean as I could get it. The letter, too, flattened between 2 sketchbooks. I didn't say anything when I put them there. What was I supposed to say? Sorry, Grandma treated your love like compost? Eventually, I got up, made a cup of tea I didn't drink, stared out the kitchen window like I was waiting for a storm I could reason with. She came out after midnight, didn't say a word, didn't look at me, just walked past into the studio, stood in front of the sculpture, and stared at it like it had betrayed her, which, in a way, it had. Then she looked down, saw the letter. She didn't pick it up, just whispered that Patricia had thrown that away too. I nodded. She didn't cry, she didn't scream, just turned and asked in the smallest voice why Patricia would do that to her. I wanted to say, because she never sees you the way you see her, or because some people don't know how to love anything that doesn't reflect them back like a mirror, or just because she's Mom. But instead, I said I didn't know, because in that moment, anything else would have sounded like an excuse. Maya nodded once and left the room. Her bedroom door clicked shut, and I swear it echoed like a slammed gate. I stared at the sculpture, the lines Maya had poured herself into, the contours she'd agonized over. 7 months of work buried under someone else's ego. And then a new thought bloomed, cold and slow. If she doesn't do something with this pain, it's going to eat her alive. So I left, went to the 24-hour art supply store. Yes, they exist, usually haunted by teenagers and men who claim spray paint is a philosophy. I walked in with a basket and a mission, Brushes, canvases, acrylics, charcoal, sculpting tools, clay, enough supplies to rebuild the Sistine Chapel in a thunderstorm. The clerk asked if I was starting a school. I told him no, a war. By the time I got home, Maya hadn't come out. I didn't knock, just set everything up in her studio. No speeches, no pressure, just the tools lined up like an invitation. I left the door cracked. Around noon, it creaked open. Maya appeared, still in yesterday's clothes, dark circles under her eyes, expression unreadable. She stood in the doorway for a long time, then silently walked in and shut the door behind her. 10 minutes later, I heard the first brush hit canvas, then clay being dropped onto the table, then the sharp sound of something cracking, followed by a long silence. Then more work, then more silence. I didn't interrupt, didn't check in. I just sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea I didn't touch again. By the next morning, she still hadn't slept. I opened the door gently. She was crouched beside the sculpture, hands covered in paint, hair tied up with what looked like a shoelace. She didn't look at me, but I looked at the sculpture and what it had become. It wasn't the same piece. She'd broken it open, reshaped it, smashed part of it with her fists, then filled the gaps with plaster and color and pieces of torn-up sketch paper. There was violence in it now, honesty. She'd embedded the letter too, shredded and rearranged across the surface. You could still read fragments. I love you. Thank you for always seeing me. I wanted this to mean something. And then I saw the screen, a small digital frame quietly looping a silent video. I leaned closer. It was me in the trash, knees deep in garbage, dragging out the sculpture, face strained, shirt stained, holding her heart in both hands. My chest tightened. I asked where she'd gotten it. Maya told me Tyler had posted it in the cousins group chat, said it was hilarious, called it Aunt Sarah dumpster diving for garbage art. The rest of them had laughed. One put a raccoon emoji under it. I asked if she'd used it in the piece. She shrugged. If everyone was going to laugh at her, she might as well make it part of the work. I stepped back, looked at her, at the piece, at the fragments of a girl trying to turn rejection into something that made sense. And I thought, no. We are not letting this die in a family group chat. That afternoon, I rented a gallery, a small, gritty place downtown that used to be a mechanic's garage and still smelled faintly of oil. Perfect. I brought in the piece myself, set it up in the corner under neutral lighting, hung nothing on the walls, just the sculpture, the letter fragments, the looping video of me in the bin. A story in 3 dimensions. When Maya walked in and saw it, her mouth dropped open. She said I couldn't show that. I told her I could. She protested that I wasn't supposed to, that it was personal. I said that was exactly the point. Patricia threw it away, and we weren't hiding it. Maya asked what would happen if people didn't get it. I told her they didn't have to get it. They just had to see it. That evening, I made some calls. Critics I hadn't spoken to in years, friends of friends. A guy who once reviewed a sidewalk chalk exhibit like it was the Louvre. I told them the story, told them about Laya, told them about Patricia. Most didn't respond. One did. He came by the next morning, walked around the sculpture twice, didn't say anything, then looked Maya dead in the eye and said it belonged in their next show. People needed to feel something again, he said. This felt like something. When he left, Maya turned to me, stunned, and asked what I'd done. I shrugged. I'd taken out the trash. The show happened 4 days later. It wasn't fancy, just a shared group exhibit in a downtown space with cracked concrete and a coffee machine older than I am. But that room was packed. Real people, not just art students with tote bags and cryptic tattoos. Actual collectors, critics, and a woman who said visceral so many times I started counting. And they didn't just glance at Maya's sculpture. They stopped, stood still in front of it, watched the screen on loop, read the shredded letter pieces layered into the clay. A few cried. One woman whispered that she felt it in her stomach and scribbled something into a notebook like she'd just seen God. By the end of the night, there were 3 emails asking about commissions. One man handed Maya a card and said he ran a residency for emerging artists. And one collector, a serious one, made an offer: $14,000. Cash, no strings. Maya stared at the number like it was in another language, then asked what she should do. I told her to wait. She asked why. Because this wasn't the end of the story yet. We didn't sell the piece. Not yet. But word spread faster than either of us expected. Photos from the exhibit made it onto blogs. Someone tweeted a clip of the sculpture's video loop with the caption, "This hurt more than I thought it would." Then a thread broke it all down: how Maya's grandmother threw away her sculpture, how her mom climbed into the bin to save it, how the piece now lived in a gallery while the family imploded quietly behind it. We didn't post anything. We didn't have to. The internet did what it always does. It connected the dots, filled in the gaps, and then lit the match. It started with a headline, "Critic or Coward? How a Grandmother's Trash Became a $14,000 Masterpiece." Then the subheading, "She called it good. The art world called it transcendent." No names, no direct quotes, but they didn't need names. Anyone who'd spent more than 5 minutes in our family tree, or followed Patricia's blog or her opinion column in that overpriced quarterly gallery magazine, knew exactly who they were talking about. Patricia, the art world's self-appointed oracle, the woman who once told me my wedding centerpiece looked visually anxious. Now, thanks to her inability to show the bare minimum of human warmth, she was a meme. One article called her the grandmother who couldn't recognize greatness if it stood sobbing in her driveway. Another dubbed Maya the artist of refuse. For once, I didn't correct the spelling when someone texted to say they were sorry for the situation. The apology calls started first from relatives, then art friends, then strangers who remembered Patricia from some gallery event a decade ago. People asking if it was really true, if it was staged, if it was an artistic experiment. That's when I knew the storm was coming. 2 days later, it arrived. Patricia and Dad at my front door like Judgment Day in beige slacks and a silk scarf. I didn't answer right away. I let them ring the bell 3 times, then I opened it just enough to remind them it was still my house. Patricia barged in anyway. Dad followed. Of course he did. She was livid. That tight-lipped, color in her cheeks kind of livid that meant I was about to be accused of a betrayal larger than murder, but slightly smaller than reupholstering her dining chairs without permission. She demanded I fix this. I leaned on the doorframe and said, "Good morning." She threw a copy of the Journal of Visual Culture on my table. Maya's sculpture was on the cover. In bold, "Wounded objects tell truth." They were calling her heartless, she said, calling her irrelevant. I said one of those was a matter of opinion. She did not laugh. Dad cleared his throat like he was about to try diplomacy. He opened his mouth, but Patricia cut him off with a raised hand. She ordered me to go public and say it was a misunderstanding, that the trash can was symbolic, that she never threw it away, that Maya and I planned it together. I asked if she was asking me to lie or if she was lying to herself now too. She flinched, recovered, called it a critique exercise, an artistic challenge, said she was guiding Maya, that she'd always believed in her potential. I let that sit for a second, just hang there in the air like spoiled perfume. Then I said Patricia hadn't thrown away Maya's art to inspire her. She'd thrown it away because she didn't think it mattered. She went quiet. That brief, dangerous kind of quiet. Dad said quietly that they were being evicted, couldn't pay the mortgage. I looked at him and said that wasn't my problem anymore. He blinked, said I'd been helping for years. I said yes, and then his wife threw my daughter's soul into a trash can, so I stopped. Patricia stepped toward me like she was about to deliver some grand monologue, but I beat her to it. I told her she wanted a press release. Here was one. I was cutting them off, financially, emotionally, legally if I had to. This was her choice. She hissed that I was punishing them. I said no, I was just done pretending she hadn't done this to herself. I shut the door before she could respond, and for the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel guilty about it. A week later, Maya's sculpture was invited to a group show in New York, then another one in Berlin. Then someone asked if she could do a limited print series of the embedded fragments and screen loop. She wasn't even done with her second year of college. That $14,000 offer? We turned it down. Eventually, it sold for $32,000 to a collector who called it the most emotionally honest piece of art he'd ever seen from someone under 25. Maya didn't believe it, still doesn't really, but she started sleeping again and eating and sketching things just because she wanted to. And then, just when I thought the dust might settle, we got the legal notice from Rebecca, of course. Her email read like a petty PowerPoint presentation. Her son Tyler, she claimed, had filmed the video that Maya used in the sculpture. That made it his intellectual property. She was seeking 30% of proceeds retroactively. My favorite line, as his legal guardian, I'm obligated to protect his creative rights. I was halfway through laughing when I got the second one from Patricia, claiming joint ownership of the sculpture on the basis that it was a reflection of their shared relationship and that no piece of art exists in a vacuum. She argued that she was a necessary catalyst and that without her, the art wouldn't exist. I wanted to frame that and hang it in a gallery labeled Narcissist in Natural Light. So we lawyered up. Maya cried the night we filed the response, not because she was scared, but because the betrayal felt so calculated now, like they hadn't just tossed her work away, they were trying to profit off the wreckage. Court didn't last long. Tyler had posted the video himself in a group chat with 16 relatives. No watermark, no copyright notice, no restrictions. Just a shaky clip of me in the trash and the caption, "My aunt is actually in the bin." Rebecca's lawyer tried to argue it was still his intellectual property. Ours replied that Maya hadn't stolen it, she'd used it as part of a larger transformative artwork. Commentary, emotional expression, fair use. The judge agreed, said something like it was art, not piracy, and tossed the whole thing like it belonged in the same bin I crawled out of. Rebecca's case collapsed before it even got off the ground. As for Patricia, the judge asked her one question about whether she'd knowingly thrown away her granddaughter's sculpture and accompanying letter. She tried to spin it again, called it performance art, called it an unspoken teaching method. The judge cut her off, ruled that Maya's piece was clearly transformative and autobiographical, and that any inspiration provided was unintentional emotional damage, not creative collaboration. Judgment, 100% of profits and rights to Maya. No appeals, no delays. It hit the blogs the next day. ArtNet, hyperallergic, a few TikTok breakdowns. One headline stood out. The grandmother who tried to copyright rejection. Rebecca stopped returning calls. Patricia went silent. Her blog hasn't been updated since. But Maya, she's back in the studio, working on something new. No scraps this time, no screens. Just her hands in the clay. The last time I peeked in, she smiled at me. A real one. Not grateful, not seeking approval. Just present. Which, for us, might be the most radical art of all. It's been 3 years now. Maya graduated with honors. She's a working artist with her own studio, her own students, and a calendar full of commissions. She teaches part-time at the same college that once terrified her. Apparently, fear can't compete with someone who's been through worse than a critique circle. We don't hear from Patricia or Rebecca, not directly, but word gets around. They sold the big house, downsized to something modest in the suburbs. Patricia was spotted working part-time at a gallery gift shop, folding postcards next to prints of artists she used to critique. Poetic, really. And us? We're fine. Better than fine. But tell me, did I go too far or just far enough?